Hi, I'm Kevin Flanagan, Head of Fixed Income Strategy at Wisdom Tree.
And I'm Jeff Weniger, Head of Equity Strategy. And this is Minds on the Markets, where we go behind the scenes and beyond the trends to explore the forces impacting our markets. All right, welcome back. Another Minds on the Markets piece here, where Kevin and I come here on YouTube and cover the markets every couple of weeks. We also, by the way, just so you know, we do a written piece that is a one-pager that we publish on the Wisdom Tree website. So make sure that you are liking and subscribing and telling your friends about the channel. Now, on this particular one, I'm going to give a little kudos here to my colleague, Kevin. I think you nailed the QT thing here, Kevin. You were talking about it. Well, we're going to get to what exactly he was talking about in a second. And nobody else on the street was really going down any QT paths. And you were basically saying, hey, pay attention. Give us the lowdown.
Yeah, I don't want us to be known as Nostradamus by any stretch of the imagination. But yeah, I think one of the last times we came and spoke to you all out there, we talked about the prospects that QT, quantitative tightening, could be coming to an end. Quite honestly, I didn't think it would necessarily be announced at the October meeting. I thought maybe in December. So it came a little bit sooner, but that was the expectation, that 2026 would not be the year of QT anymore. And that's where we're at. So the Fed's going to stop balance sheet roll off on December 1st. So what that means is whatever treasuries or mortgage-backed securities are maturing, they will be replaced 100% in full. Now, according to the Fed, though, they want to change the mix a little bit of their balance sheet so that in order to become more treasury-centric, when mortgage-backed securities come off the balance sheet, they are going to reinvest it appears right now, into T-bills, not back into mortgage-backs. So that's one little nuance for this sort of go-round. But yes, according to the Fed, December 1st, that's the end of QT.
And at the peak, the Fed balance sheet had gotten up to something like $9 trillion. So that when they were purchasing all these bonds for many years, the money printer concept that many people are talking about, that's what that was. And then it's run off down to what's the number now?
It's a little over $6 trillion. So, I mean, what the concern has been, and maybe why the Fed went down the road a little bit sooner, is reserves in the funding markets. The funding markets is where it all happens. We saw it in the financial crisis. We saw it during COVID. I remember in August of 2007 was kind of like the precursor in the funding markets of what ended up happening to financial institutions. And what we found out was that, when the Fed does QT, they're not buying as much as they used to. So they're absorbing some of these reserves in the banking system. Remember, QE is quantitative easing. QT is tightening, right? But people don't necessarily think of it like that. So what can happen, though, if things are a little bit, out of order to some extent, you could see money market kind of rates like SOFR, that's the new LIBOR, secured overnight financing rate, government repo. They may trade over the Fed funds rate. Fed doesn't want that. So that's what we're looking at now. The first way to perhaps prevent that from happening, you stop QT. But the Fed can always do other things in the market, temporary open market operations such as repo, which they do on a regular basis, that provides money to the banking system that is collateralized back by treasuries to the Fed. So that's kind of where we're at now. But if you look at social media, people get excited. They get anxious about these things. And I think it's important for Jeff, you and I to come out and try to be the voices of reason from time to time.
Well, don't look at me and say voice of reason. I could be unreasonable. But no, I mean, I think if you had $9 trillion and you essentially QT'd it down to $6 trillion-ish, that there would be some firepower. If there was, we don't see any issues in the plumbing of the system right now. But if there were to be some issues, you could almost say, well, hey, we have a precedent here of going up to 9. We're down at 6. If we need to re-engage QE again, which is not something you're talking about, but that could be a path, right?
You are spot on with that. And actually, believe it or not, there has been some reports suggesting, and kind of like the title of our piece, can QT lead to QE again? And we saw it in 2019, that if their temporary open market operations aren't doing the trick, how do you do the trick? Well, you turn the QE spigot back on, and the Fed starts buying T-bills. So yeah, we've been down this road before, but you're right. There's been no signs right now that there's an issue. But we are getting closer to year end. Year end is quarter end. And sometimes you do see pressure in the funding markets then. So it will be talked about. But as of now, Chairman Powell and company haven't really provided us in any direction on that front, but it is something to watch. And remember, final note, I think for me on the subject, it would not be monetary policy related. It would have no relation to what is the jobs report, what's the CPI report. Nothing to do with that. It would be strictly, to use your term, to fix the plumbing in the funding markets.
Got it. Well, what you just watched is the Minds on the Market series. Kevin and I every couple of weeks doing these. So make sure that you're subscribing. And then also you mentioned year end. You know what, Kevin? We're going to be putting out the 2026 piece pretty soon in a few weeks. So make sure you come back to Wisdom Tree to see what our views are for the next 12 months. For Kevin Flanagan, I'm Jeff Weniger. This is Minds on the Markets.